The Jets continue to search for answers as the losing streak hits 4, and what is going on with Connor Hellebuyck? Hey everyone, welcome into another edition of Jets Setting. Rob Wong, joined alongside by Winnipeg Sun Jets writer Scott Billeck and Winnipeg Sun sports editor Ted Wyman. And guys, it's now a 4-game losing streak for the Winnipeg Jets, which is something we haven't seen too much of this year for a team that's been so consistent. Scott, we'll start with you. Is there any reason to panic with what we've seen lately?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, right? I mean, I don't know what a level of alarm you want to call it, but I think there's certainly a cause for concern. This team has put up several duds now in the last 4 games. I mean, I would argue New Jersey was one of their worst games, followed by the New York Islanders, which is probably their worst game of the season. And then I'm not buying into we played well for 2 periods against against the Washington Capitals and still got shut out 3-0. Like that to me, and there was 11 games left at that point when that happened, or after that happened. And that's not what, I mean, why are we, this team's looking for some silver linings or, whatever at a time of the year where you're supposed to be ramping up and playing some of your best hockey, fine tuning, maybe tweaking some lines just a little bit, but nothing is really set in stone with this team. The lines aren't set straight. They can't get scoring out of some of them. Some guys aren't showing up at night. I mean, you look at Tuesday night's game against their loss against the Edmonton Oilers. If you watch the overtime back, watch Kyle Connor after he gives the puck away. It's like his controller disconnected, right? That's a tough play. And I imagine him and the coaching staff watching that video back today, it's not going to look pretty when it comes to to his effort there, and that's maybe the biggest word right now is this team against Edmonton. They played really well in the first period. They absolutely didn't show up for the second period, and then they played a pretty even third period. Got some good, they found a way to come back in that game, and then they just kind of turned it off again in overtime, right? And that's just not good enough right now. That's not going to win you a first round series against, which is likely going to be either Dallas or Colorado. You're not going to beat either of those teams in 7 games at the moment playing the game that they are. I think there is a cause for concern right now, and it's this team just has zero consistency, and it's hard to know which team is showing up every night.
Ted, any red flags for you lately?
Well, it's terrible timing, Rob, and that's the thing that's really hit the Jets hard. They were tied for first place a week ago, and everybody was talking because they had just beat the New York Rangers like there was a potential Stanley Cup final matchup. And now it's only 4 games later, and nobody's thinking that anymore. In fact, they're only 4 points ahead of Nashville in terms of holding on to third place in the Central Division. They could slip into the wild card completely. Nashville hasn't lost in 2 months. I mean, it's a tough position to be in when you start to play this poorly at this time of year. And the fact is, as Scott alluded to, they played 2/3 of a game in Washington. They lost. They played not even 2/3 of a game against Edmonton. They lose in overtime. But the fact is, they had a terrible, terrible second period. And their power play was absolutely atrocious the entire game. They never got the puck into the zone and got set up. They couldn't complete a pass for the life of them. They had a 4-minute power play at the end of the second period. Never even got a shot on net. They had the last 2 minutes of third period in a tie game with power play. They never got a good scoring chance. I mean, these are things that should be rectified at this point of the season. If you're a team that legitimately is being talked about as a Stanley Cup contender, you can't be playing 2/3 of a game. You can't have some of the worst special teams in the entire NHL. Yeah, losing to Edmonton, that's not like in a one-off situation, that's going to happen. Edmonton's a good team. They got good players. Zach Hyman scores an overtime goal when the Jets forwards basically disappeared. But, I mean, it's just now putting that on top of the fact that they had lost their previous 3 games in kind of a terrible fashion. I have a lot of respect for Brendan Dillon, the Winnipeg Jets defenseman, but last night he was talking about how there was so many positives and such a big step forward for the Jets. Well, this is supposedly a Stanley Cup contender. A big step forward is playing 2/3 of a game and not getting any shots on the power play. I don't agree.
Well, if there's one area of concern as well, it might be on the back end for some people. Connor Hellebuyck's been sensational all season long here, Ted, but in March, he has been the opposite. 4-5-1 is the record, 3.28 goals against average, and a 902 save percentage, which is something a lot of people are not used to seeing when it comes to Hellebuyck. What is going on between the pipes right now, in your opinion?
Well, some of it is that he's just been left hung out to dry. Certainly the game in New York against the Islanders last week, you couldn't really fault him. He was absolutely barraged the entire game, and they mercifully lifted him and put Laurent Brossoit into the goal. But it's not like he's much like what the Winnipeg Jets have been. For 34 games, or in the middle of the season, they were the best team in the NHL. They were the best defensive team in the NHL. They were consistent. You knew what they were going to look like every single night, and Connor Hellebuyck was absolutely stellar in between the pipes during that time. Now in this period of wild inconsistency from the Jets, and it doesn't even go from game to game, it goes from period to period, he has not been able to just hold the fort for them. And yeah, his numbers have taken a bit of a beating here. And, maybe, just maybe he's not going to get as good a shot at the Vezina because of this bit of a swoon. But there's 10 games left in the season. They're going to need him to be absolutely stellar. They're going to need him to be absolutely stellar in the playoffs. He can't be like he is right now. He's got to be that guy from midseason, because the truth is, I don't think Hellebuyck's ever really been a star in the playoffs to this point. He's a great goalie. He's a Vezina winning goalie. He's in that conversation every year. But has he been that great playoff goalie to this point? Haven't seen it. And that's something the Winnipeg Jets really need to see out of him.
Scott, what's your level of concern right now with Hellebuyck's play?
Yeah, I'm not too concerned with it. I think part of it, I think you look at last night or on Tuesday night against Edmonton, and he had a heck of a game. He makes a monster save on Zach Hyman after Logan Stanley's fight in the first period, and that's a big saving. They needed that save at that time because, everybody was into that game, and then if you allow a goal there, it just sucks the life out of both team and the crowd and the atmosphere. So I'm not too worried about his game. There's probably a couple soft goals on that road trip that he allowed in that he'd want back. But, this is a goalie that's, I think in the last three of the last 4 games, he's faced 40 shots. That's something that's sort of been unheard of. This is something that used to happen to him all the time. But this year, they've kept shot totals really low, and they haven't really had a lot of rubber on them. But, this is now a team that's giving up a lot more in the middle of the ice, a lot more slot shots, a lot more high danger opportunities. We saw it a couple times last night where Hellebuyck makes a few big saves, but then they just don't get that clear, or the second and third opportunities are there. Nobody's clearing the puck on them. Nobody's doing that. The line change that led to Connor Brown's goal was just a horrible goal to allow a guy like that just have a shot in the middle there for no reason. I'm less concerned about Connor Hellebuyck, but as Ted said, there is truth to his playoff prowess. It hasn't been great. He's played some good series at times, but there's also been ones where he's been outdueled over the years, and more of those than not, right? And so I think the concern here is making sure that he gets into the playoffs with enough rest. He's played far fewer games so far than he has in almost every other season that he's played in now. And that's a big deal, just to have him kind of fresh and rested. That's a big thing going into the playoffs. But yeah, he has gone a little bit away of the team. I think there's a bit of that a lot of that is the way the team has played in front of him. It's just not natural now for him. It used to be all the time that he would know that everything coming at him was dangerous. But all year, it's been less and less of that. And, I'd argue he won the Vezina through the first half of the year, and nobody's really come close to him. Thatcher Demko's injured, so that makes it a bit easier for him. But yeah, it's been a tough month, and it's been a tough month for the team. And Hellebuyck just hasn't stole the games like he used to. So it's, I'm not concerned about it. But, I think, where there's smoke, there's a bit of fire, and they got to get better in goal if they're not going to get better in front of them.
Well, the Jets will try to snap their skid on Thursday. It won't be easy, though. They'll host the defending Cup champs from Vegas. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Scott Billeck and Ted Wyman, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.